Kevin Clements was the co-founder of the National Center for Peace and Conflict Studies. He also has worked as a peace activist and nuclear disarmament activist for the last 50 or 60 years, and also is the director of the Toda Peace Institute, which is based in Tokyo. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Kevin up to share his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's my pleasure to be back here in this august establishment in Burn 7. And I gather we're facing stiff competition from the Classic Society, who are having a lecture right now on Hippocrates and Aeschylus. So if any of you wish to go along there and to the Classics, this is your chance. When I heard the title of this, I was very impressed. It was in my lifetime, and indeed it is in my lifetime. I'm a 1946er, post-war baby boomer. So I was born into the nuclear age, which started in 1945. And so my whole life, to some extent, has been conditioned by the threat of nuclear war and the dangers it poses to humanity. As he witnessed the first detonation of a nuclear weapon on July 16, 1945, Robert Oppenheimer recalled a piece of Hindu scripture from the Bhagavad Gita, which says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." He realized that he had unleashed from the bottle a genie that was very challenging and not going to be put back in again. And he immediately regretted the decision when he saw what happened and the destructive capacity. He immediately regretted the decision and became pacifist, and he didn't say that at the time, but he eventually did, and was hounded by the FBI and others, and eventually died rather prematurely. I met his son once in Los Alamos in Mexico, who was still trying to kind of revive his father's reputation as a peace builder rather than as the developer of nuclear weapons. Reagan and Gorbachev in 1985 said a nuclear war can't be won and must never be fought. And that, I think, is the sort of, in a sense, the end point at which this film comes to. Nuclear weapons are based on faulty logic. Deterrence theory is based on kind of fear and luck, which are terrible ingredients for any kind of security policy. When it was first developed, as you'll see in the film, it was a wonderful frontier for physicists to get involved in. Leo Szilard and Oppenheimer and Joe Rotblat and even from this university, Robin Williams, who was one of the vice chancellors here, they were all involved in what was kind of intriguing physical and scientific endeavor, which was how to control the atom. And then how to put it to nefarious use as well as for peaceful purposes. I don't know if this is going to be in the film or not, but the general, when he first saw the Trinity explosion, described it as thus: "The lighting effects beggars description. The whole country was lit by a searing light with the intensity many times that of the midday sun. It was golden, purple, violet, grey, and blue. It lit every peak, crevice, and ridge of the nearby mountain range with a clarity and beauty that can't be described, but must be seen to be imagined." So in the very first days of nuclear power and nuclear weaponry, I mean, they were playing with the most destructive forces around and getting their jollies by watching what they could produce and the tests and so forth that went with it. So 76 years later, where are we? We're celebrating and commemorating Hiroshima Day and Nagasaki Day again. We still have 10,000 nuclear weapons. The United States and Russia are embarked on modernization programs. Russia is looking at more and more diabolical ways of delivering these weapons through supersonic torpedoes and God knows what. Beijing is threatening to expand its arsenal, and a few weeks ago was reputed to have said in response to Japan's statement that it was going to come to the defense of Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion. China said if it does, Hiroshima and Nagasaki will seem like pale imitations of the nuclear weapons we'll spend on Japan. So this is still, a really fraught area, but fortunately there's hope. As you said, I spent from the age of 13 when I joined the Youth Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, I spent a lifetime objecting to the evil of these weapons. That's the only way they can be described. And as you'll see when you see the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there was no possibility of distinction between combatants and non-combatants. But fortunately, in 2017, 120 nations said, let's put an end to this lunacy and develop the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. That now has 86 countries have signed it and 55 have ratified. So it's come into force for those that have signed it. And there'll be an opening conference of state parties to that treaty in February or March of next year. The treaty means that you have to put national legislation around the commitment. So the New Zealand government has to do that, and we need to hold them to that. And the ban comprehensively bans the use, the development, and the possession of nuclear weapons as illegal. So it builds on the World Court decision of the 1980s. There are big challenges, however. The treaty only applies to those countries that have joined it, and there are no nuclear powers that have done so yet. And so one of the big challenges is how to kind of make sure that it becomes an extraordinarily strong norm that will delegitimize the use of such weapons forever and under every circumstance. And more than that, that it will go the way of chemical weapons, biological weapons, landmines, cluster munitions, dum-dum bullets, and God knows what, which have been banned because of their negative humanitarian consequences. So there's a norm now prohibiting the use of nuclear weapons, but all of you, I mean, individually and collectively, I mean, as I age, all of you, I hope, will pick up the baton, using the Olympic analogy, because the 21st century is going to become really fraught if states and peoples feel that the only way they can guarantee their security is through nuclear arms and the threat of nuclear weapons. We need movements. We need strong movements to make sure that TPNW comes into force and that nuclear weapons are shamed into signing it and that they can be abolished. All of the kinds of agreements that we had with the Non-Proliferation Treaty, for example, have proven to be chimerical. They legitimize a very unequal balance with the world. We can divide into 5 so-called legitimate nuclear states and the rest. Now we have 5 legitimate nuclear states, 4 non-legitimate nuclear states, and others that think, like Saudi Arabia and Iran, that the only way they can guarantee security is by crossing the threshold. But let's not cross the threshold. Let's watch the film, and I hope you can dedicate yourselves to getting rid of these diabolical weapons. Cheers.